Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're untangling the really complex geopolitical history and the fascinating modern survival of the Naga people. And we're going to do this by following one man's highly perilous, illegal journey across a forbidden border. Let's just dive right in.
3 million. That staggering number represents the people of the Naga nation. We're talking about a population whose traditional homeland was completely fractured by modern state lines, plunging them into a 50-year conflict. Now, historically, this territory was home to 35 distinct tribes, yet today, it's often described as a forgotten nation. Understanding what happened to them is a vital global lesson in the enduring impacts of arbitrary borders.
To make sense of this immense history, here's our roadmap for today. First, a forgotten nation divided. Second, journey across the border. Third, headhunters, missionaries, and tradition. Fourth, modern struggles and survival. And finally, preserving the Naga heritage. Section 1. A forgotten nation divided. Let's begin by examining exactly how this ancestral territory was carved up by modern state lines. In the aftermath of colonization, this ancestral land was arbitrarily shared across an artificial boundary. It literally split the Naga people between India and Burma, now Myanmar. On the Indian side, you've got the territory spanning the entire state of Nagaland, plus parts of Assam, Manipur, and Arunachal Pradesh. But over on the Burmese side, it encompasses incredibly isolated, high-altitude valleys and these rugged mountains overlooking the Chindwin River.
And, as you can imagine, this arbitrary division sparked cascading historical trauma. It really starts with the 1879 British invasion of Konima, a fiercely defended village. Then, jumping to the 1950s, right after Indian independence, A.Z. Fizzo founded the Naga National Council, the NNC, to fight for sovereignty. Ultimately, this resulted in decades of total militarization and a 50-year conflict where, according to local accounts, entire villages were burned, forcing people to hide out in the deep jungle.
Moving on to Section 2, Journey Across the Border. To see the human reality behind these rigid borders, we follow Vizier Sanu, an exiled historian currently living in Australia, as he illegally treks back into the Patkai Mountains of Burma.
Vizier is actually fulfilling a promise to return to a remote tribe. He's guided by San Juan, an NC resistance chief, who actually hides his face behind dark glasses because, get this, he survived a totally brutal bear attack in the jungle. His first-hand account of having the skin from his head pulled down and his jawbone broken is a stark, visceral reminder of the incredible, life-threatening dangers of living completely off the grid as a political exile.
But nature isn't the only threat out there. Local accounts report that villagers on the Burmese side live in constant daily fear of the Myanmar army. Soldiers reportedly exploit the population systematically, using young men as forced porters, seizing young girls, and burning vital food granaries as they move out. It leaves these communities completely helpless and impoverished.
Which brings us to Section 3, Headhunters, Missionaries, and Tradition. Surviving the trek, Vizier finally reaches his destination, the village of the Kiamyungian, the fierce people of the Great Springs, where he is to be inducted as a chief.
Now, the absolute cultural heart of this village is the Murung. Historically, this ceremonial house held the deepest spiritual significance for the tribe. These were a people who historically practiced headhunting, intensely honoring the prowess of the warrior. They placed immense power in divinatory dreams and deeply rooted animist rituals. This stuff formed the very foundation of their societal structure and daily survival.
Under the old animist traditions, they used sacred giant ceremonial drums. They actually believed that frantically beating these drums during a lunar eclipse would revive a moon that had been eaten by a tiger. It's a wildly fascinating worldview. But when Baptist churches spread rapidly in the early 2000s, often evangelized by other Nagas, many of these ancient artifacts were destroyed because they were viewed as contrary to the gospel. So today, it's often the local pastor, rather than the traditional chief, who holds customary authority.
Despite this massive cultural shift, Vizier's coronation is marked by the Liam, a sacred pact of peace. To cement this alliance, the villagers spent an entire year carefully carving and hoisting a massive new ceremonial giant drum right into the village center. Vizier specifically encourages this. He urges them to preserve their ancient cultural identity alongside their newly adopted faith, proving the two really don't have to be mutually exclusive.
All right, Section 4, Modern Struggles and Survival. Leaving the remote mountains, the explainer shifts focus. Entering Koyama, the capital of the Indian state of Nagaland, we find a society grappling with severe contemporary crises.
A local taxi driver's reality perfectly distills this suffocating pressure. He talks about being forced to pay illegal taxes to 3 different factions just to earn a basic livelihood. In this heavily militarized environment, ordinary citizens find themselves caught right in the crossfire of competing political and insurgent groups every single day.
So how does all this connect? Well, these daily pressures interlock to create a massive socioeconomic crisis. Decades of political conflict have totally stifled economic growth, basically leaving agriculture as the only industry. As a result, 90 to 95% of businesses are owned by non-Nagas. Add to this the geographic proximity to the Golden Triangle's massive heroin production, and you get a devastating spike in intravenous drug use. That, tragically, has fueled a severe HIV epidemic among the youth.
This leads us to our final part, Section 5, Preserving the Naga Heritage. Despite these overwhelming geopolitical and economic pressures on both sides of the border, we're focusing on the incredible grassroots resilience of the Naga people. We're seeing highly practical, localized solutions taking root right now. For example, local leader Nichut launched microcredit initiatives to provide critical startup loans to vulnerable groups, especially widows, who tragically lost their husbands to the ongoing conflict. This direct financial support really empowers the Naga people to own and manage their own local businesses and reclaim their economic agency.
And this resilience extends far beyond economics. There is a fierce dedication to cultural survival. In the village of Tetsumi, elders are intentionally training around 40 young people from the Chekasang tribe. They're passing down the deeply traditional songs and dances that represent their ancestors' history and victories, making sure that the soul of their people is not lost to the modern era.
Ultimately, Vizier's remarkable journey across this fractured landscape forces us to ask a profound question. Having seen the raw survival in the high mountains and the complex struggles in the capital cities, we're left to wonder, how will this incredibly unique, resilient culture navigate its precarious future? Can these ancient traditions truly survive the overwhelming pressures of artificial borders and modern globalization? It's a powerful reminder of how delicate, yet fiercely resilient, human heritage can be. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive into the source material has given you a whole new perspective.